All right, so we are live. Thanks everybody for joining us. It is June 22nd. Thank you for joining us on Monday morning to start your week. This is Greater Lynn Chamber of Commerce, Lynn Main Street. EDIC is joining us as well. And this is a SBA update. And we're gonna first start by just going around and introducing the panelists, and then Dan will get right into a slideshow. Dan, you wanna start since you're—
Oh yeah, sure. So my name's Dan Martinello. I am one of the lender relations specialists for the SBA here in Massachusetts. So my job predominantly is to help lenders and small businesses get access to capital, and for lenders to help small businesses gain access to capital. So we work with a variety of lenders, traditional banks, credit unions, micro lender. Lynn EDIC is a micro lending partner of the SBA, just for reference. So, and then we also work with a variety of resource partners that help with technical assistance. So we'll be talking about the coronavirus relief funding programs today, and just giving you some updates, some changes that have made, and there's a lot of changes. So, hopefully these changes are for the better. So whoever wants to just introduce themselves next.
I'll go. I'm Kathleen Cole, Director of the Downtown Lynn Cultural District. I'm also with Community Development. I look at some CDBG opportunities there, and co-founder of Lynn Main Streets. So wearing a few hats here, but all sort of in support of our community and our local and small businesses. Thanks for having me.
Hi, and I'm Bill Bachmack. I work for the City of Lynn's EDIC office as a project coordinator, and we're happy to be here to represent the agency and to thank Dan for all the work that he's done over the last couple of weeks with the programs that have been made available to help assist small businesses here in Lynn.
Hi, I'm Tia Cole. I am the Community Engagement Director for Lynn Main Streets, and really happy to have Dan here. Thank you.
Right. Is that everybody, Sam? Oh, you're on mute.
Forgot about that. So we're on Facebook Live, and we also have some attendees on the attendee side. So we'll wait till after your presentation to answer any questions that come in. All
right, cool. All right, let's get started. And thanks again, everybody, for tuning in on Monday morning. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. I know the weather was great. Hopefully everybody got outdoors, enjoyed the fresh air, enjoyed Father's Day. And, so let's definitely get into it. We got a lot of stuff here. The one thing is I provided this slideshow to Sam. So anybody that wants to dive into it a little bit more than welcome to disperse this to the community. It can be a lot, but hopefully the new changes that have come with the program are going to make it much more easier for small businesses when it comes to, choosing which program is correct for them. And when it comes to the Paycheck Protection Program, understanding that the forgiveness process is a little bit easier than it was in the past. That's one thing when it comes to these loan programs. It's, there's a lot of trial and error. These programs were implemented pretty much overnight. When this pandemic happened, the government has to try to implement a plan that relates to small businesses across the 50 states, including the US territories, and that's not an easy task to take on, especially for our lending partners as well. So there's been a lot of changes over the last few weeks, and I know it's very hard to keep up with. I mean, I work at the SBA, and it's very hard to keep up with. So, the heads are spinning for everybody, and we're all in it together. But I think at the end of the day, they consistently are trying to make changes to make sure that it's as easy as possible for the small business. So, let's get into it. We don't have to see my face on this slide. There's really nothing important there, but I'll go over just some numbers as far as the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, because it's important to understand what's going on nationally and locally in that sense. So as far as the on 6/12. So these are the numbers as far as dollars given out, loans given out nationwide. So you can see here, this is a huge volume for the Paycheck Protection Program. And honestly, the SBA, the Treasury couldn't do any of this without the help of the lending partners across the United States, and especially here in Massachusetts. I mean, we're top 10 in every category. So the lenders are working night and day, very hard to make sure that these dollars hit the small businesses and help them stay open, help them grow, and eventually, hopefully all this money can be forgiven so that, they don't have to, worry about an additional, loan, during this time. So, and as you can see here, when it comes to, the loan size, this is truly a small business loan program. So, this is broken down by loan size. And you can see pretty much 80% of all loans given out under the Paycheck Protection Program have been for $100,000 or under. I mean, 65% is $50,000 or under. So this is, your truly your small businesses across the board. I know, when people watch the news, whatever news outlet there was, they're talking about some bigger businesses taking advantage of this program. I think, the SBA and the government itself recognized that, and, they worked with some of these businesses to recoup that money back, because that's another thing. When this first came out, nothing was really clear on who could use this and who couldn't use this. So those are the changes that had to be made over the course of time, and the adjustments. So a lot of those big businesses, I think it was the Los Angeles Lakers hit the news, Shake Shack, they sent the money back to the SBA. So as you can see here, it is really being utilized by who truly needs it, and that's the small business community. So these are just the numbers, as far as our district goes. So we're in the Northeast region. So, the New England states. So Massachusetts is clearly, leading the way with over 107,000 PPP borrowers. So right now, there's still a lot of money remaining. I mean, we're talking a little under $130 billion. So that's money that was given out in the second phase of the PPP funding. And it's really slowed down. Just one thing to note is, if you have not applied and you are looking to apply, you only have a week left. The program is going to stop taking applications across nationwide on June 30th. So keep that in mind. If you have not applied yet, try to get with an area lender and get that application submitted in really quickly, because you really only have 1 week or 8 days pretty much. So just keep that in mind. And then next, I just want to just show you the nationwide report on the economic injury disaster loan, because this is important. This portal just opened back up. I think it was Thursday, I want to say, for all small businesses. It was shut down just for the agricultural industry for the last few weeks, but now the loan portal is up for all small businesses that can apply, that are eligible. So again, here, these are our regional numbers. So in Massachusetts, what happened with this program, I think when I came onto these calls initially back in April, the approval rate was very, very slow. It was taking a really long time to get approval. So in early April, we're seeing less than 50 approvals on a day. Now we're seeing we're averaging over 1,000 a day for the last few weeks here in Massachusetts. So the EIDL loan approvals have really picked up across the board. So in Massachusetts, we're heading towards, we're probably at over 25,000 at this point, because these numbers were from 6.5. So we're probably closer to 26, 27,000 approvals, as you can see here on the slide. So, just keep that in mind. That program is run directly through the SBA. So you're not going to a lender, you're going on SBA.gov and you're applying through there. The application process is pretty simple. It's only about 2 to 3 pages. It's probably just as simple as doing a personal loan application online. So, just keep that in mind. That is an actual loan. So it's going to be set at a 30-year rate. If you're a normal small business, your rate will be 3.75. If you're a nonprofit, it will be at 2.75. but this might be a better option for some small businesses because it opens the door for more small businesses, more nonprofits to be eligible under this program as opposed to the PPP program. Yeah, so this is just a screenshot. Again, Sam, if you want to give this out to anybody that's on the call, up above is the link for the actual application itself. On that front page, you'll be able to find out if you're eligible or not, as long as you can select one of the different areas of eligibility, you're good to go on to the next step. So again, it should only take about 10 to 15 minutes for the application process. Weeks ago or months ago, back in April, this was a much harder process. They've streamlined everything to make it, quick and sufficient. One thing you want to just keep in mind is when you're finished with the process, make sure that you write down your confirmation number that you get, because anytime you're looking for a status update on that, you are going to be required to provide that confirmation number. So just keep that in mind. Please don't lose that. So whether you're reaching out to me at the SBA office in Massachusetts, or you're contacting the disaster center, we need that, because if I send an email down to the disaster center, they're not going to answer me unless I have that confirmation number. So, just a couple of things that have changed in this program. So initially, the program went up to $2 million just due to the amount of funding that's available, the amount of application requests that have come in nationwide. They've kind of shut that down, or not shut that down, but lowered that to $150,000 for everybody as far as maximum qualification. Doesn't mean you're going to get $150,000 if you're a sole proprietor and your sales and things like that don't match up. You might get lower amounts. I've seen, 10,000, 30,000, 50,000. Things like that. But for right now, they're capping everybody at 150,000. If that changes, that could change. There could be another phase of funding in the future. So keep that in mind. One of the things is you are allowed, if you've have an approved EIDL loan, you can ask for an increase, but for the time being, if you've already gotten 150,000, I would wait to see if there's going to be any more funding before you do that, because they're not giving any increases at this time. So the interest rates, like I said, will be at 3.75% for small businesses. For the majority of small businesses, unless you're a nonprofit organization, it will be at 2.75%. And the term is up to 30 years. We say up to 30 years, but they're really giving everybody 30 years across the board. One thing with this is there's no prepayment penalties. So, to keep that in mind. If your business, let's say we're a year or two down the road and your business is back up and running, it's running smoothly, and you want to pay off that loan, you can do so. There's no prepayment penalties. Another thing, when it comes to your initial payments, the first 12 months of this loan is on a deferment. So you're not actually going to have any payment requirements for the first year of the loan. And they'll go by disbursement date of the loan when it comes to that. So, just keep that in mind. However, interest will accrue during those 12 months. So, it's not that you will owe, that interest. So if you have the $150,000, you got to factor that in, or if you got a lower amount, you want to, just keep that in mind. And as far as what these loans are used for, so they're predominantly working capital loans. They're used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills. Had the business that could have been paid had the business, the disaster have not occurred. So keep in mind, these are not for expanding your business or growing your business or replacing lost sales. It's really just to keep your business going, during the pandemic. So just, you want to keep that in mind, because we do get a lot of questions. We've gotten a lot of questions through our email. Hey, can I, buy new pieces of equipment? Can I, do some leasehold improvements? And then that's really not the intention of this program. However, we do have our normal SBA programs still running. So if those are things you're looking to do, you may want to contact your local lender, whoever you're currently working with, or you can check our website and see who we work with, which is, a good variety of lenders, and they may be able to help you through one of our current SBA 7A programs, or the 504 program, or a micro lending program, depending on the need. So let's get into the most important part, which I'm sure everybody is, wondering and concerned about and confused about, because I know there's mass confusion across the board, and it's totally understandable because, when it comes to the Paycheck Protection Program, there has been, I think, 16 interim final rules, so about 16, 17 changes since the beginning of April, since this was implemented. So that is not easy for a small business or our lending partners or ourselves in the office or our community leaders to try to keep track of. But what's important is now that a lot of people have applied, everybody's worried about, will my loan get forgiven? And, I think a lot of the Congress and the government heard and a lot of opinions and the voices that were coming back of what people are facing from day to day when it comes to this program. And I think they tried their best to make some changes that will help you as the small business owner make sure that you have an advantage of making sure this loan is fully forgiven. So a couple of things you want to look at that have changed recently. They've extended your covered period when you can utilize the fund. So initially it was just 8 weeks from the time of disbursement. Now it's you can go up to 24 weeks. With that said, we're getting a lot of questions. Well, do I have to wait the full 24 weeks for forgiveness? The answer to that is no. You don't have to wait the full 24-week covered period to ask for forgiveness, but you can utilize that if you want to, but you can do any time in between that 24-week time frame. If you already have your PPP loan and you just want to stick with the 8 weeks as well, you can also do that. Another beneficial requirement that changed was, so in the initial rulings, you needed to use at least 75% of that loan for payroll. Now that's down to 60%. So that is making it also a little bit easier, especially when you can spread it out over that 24-week time frame. So as long as you utilize 60% of the loan proceeds for payroll, you can utilize that other percentage, that other 40% for other eligible costs such as utilities, lease, mortgage interest, things like that. Your loan will be fully forgiven. So keep that in mind. That's very, very important. Another thing, if you're a new applicant, so it changed on June 5th. Basically, all new applications have gone from a 2-year maturity to a 5-year maturity. So they've, so if when it comes time to forgiveness, and let's say maybe a small portion of that loan is not going to be forgiven, your payment has now, your term has now increased. So that will, help hopefully you paying that off in a reasonable manner. The interest rate has not changed. It's still at 1%. So that's another benefit to the borrower. One thing you do want to know, that if you're a current, if you already have your loan, PPP loan, you can request from your bank to increase the term from 2 years to 5 years. However, that has to be a mutual agreement. So we cannot speak for all of the lending partners, and that is a case-by-case decision. So that has to be mutually agreed on by the borrower and the lender, and they have the right to not offer your request. So you want to just keep that in mind. It's not every loan's going to change to 5 years. It's automatic if you've applied June 5th and after, but if you already applied and gotten the funds prior to that, and you're interested in increasing your term, you have to talk with your bank. But again, it's going to be a case-by-case decision. Another thing that's come into play too is safe harbor deadline. So that was a big thing, was, you as the borrower needing to bring up your staff to full capacity as it was prior to the pandemic by June 30th. Now that's been extended to December 31st. So that gives people a lot of leeway, and hopefully everybody's business, is back up to full capacity by that time. But truly, we don't know. But at the end of the day, it's giving everybody a much more flexible time frame to do that. Also, when it comes to payroll itself, if you've had to decrease salaries for one reason or another, that same safe harbor comes into play for that as well. So, you are, giving that safe harbor extension deadline to the end of the year. And that's why when it comes to forgiveness, we try to tell borrowers to take your time, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, make sure that you are fully eligible for forgiveness when you're submitting that application. There's no need for a rush because at the end of the day, you have that 24-week covered period. Also, too, another thing that's changed across the board for every borrower, regardless of when you applied, is the deferment period. The deferment period changed from 6 months to 10 months. So now you have that 24 weeks and then 10 months after that 24 weeks to truly actually submit a forgiveness application. So you have to submit it by the end of that deferment period. So you have some time. So just make sure that, if you're unsure if you're fully forgiven or not, that you retain all your proper payroll paperwork. If you've had to offer jobs back to your employees, that you're keeping track of all the offers. If certain employees didn't come back, make sure you're also keeping track of any sort of other employment retention records that you need, such as anybody that's voluntarily relieve themselves of the job or had to change their hours based on maybe they have children and they needed a more flexible schedule because they're concerned with daycare services, things like that. You have to keep in mind just retaining your records is going to be very important during the forgiveness process. Again, so as far as eligibility, it hasn't changed too much since the changes of June 5th. One thing you want to just keep in mind is if non-financial charges when it comes to any sort of legal issues, that we were going back at least 5 years on those. Now they're only going to go back 12 months look back on any sort of non-financial criminal charges. So that was one change that came into play as far as eligibility concerned. So that's, beneficial for some small businesses. But, as you can see here on the slides, any business that meets the 7A, which is our main loan program under the SBA loan eligibility requirements, can apply for the PPP loan. So that's, businesses with 500 employees or less, any small business that meets their size standards based on their NEX code. There can be some exceptions made for the accommodation and food industry, as far as you can see here on the slide with the NEX code as well. And then non-for-profit religious businesses. So that's there are some businesses that typically the SBA doesn't traditionally do lending to. So these are some exceptions that are made for this program in particular, and also our EIDL program as well. So you're going to see your 501c3, your 501c19 tribal business concerns, and we do get a lot of questions about different nonprofits. If you don't see it here on this slide, for the Paycheck Protection Program, those are the only nonprofits that are eligible. The EIDL program is open to a variety of nonprofits. So if you can't apply for the PPP, certainly look into the EIDL program. And then sole proprietors, independent contractors, and any self-employed individuals. And this is just a screenshot of the different applications that you'll be seeing. So right now there's 2 applications for forgiveness out there. There's the general forgiveness application, so that's a longer format, and then there's the easy forgiveness application that just came out last week. We are under the assumption that most applicants will probably be utilizing the easy forgiveness application, and the links and the instructions are on here. You can find the actual applications on sba.gov under the coronavirus relief section. You can also find it on the Treasury website under their coronavirus relief section as well. Please, if you're a small business, I highly suggest looking at the easy forgiveness application with the instructions right now. There's 3 categories that if you can check off one of those categories, you will be eligible to utilize that easy forgiveness application. And it is, in my opinion, fairly easy. It's a 1-page application. It's, it basically breaks things down on how much did you use for payroll, how much did you use for other eligible uses, and you basically factor in the 60 percentile that you need to use for payroll, and then the chart will tell you how much is forgiven. So there's no listing out the employees and the hours and the FTEs. None of that is on the easy application. So I really highly suggest making sure that you can check off one of those 3 boxes that's in the instruction section of the application. And we are anticipating most small businesses being eligible to utilize that. If you're not, however, there's the standard application, and that's going to require you to input more information. If you need help with that application,
I think we have Dan frozen. It might take him a minute to come back.
That was me, or if it was him. Sorry, guys. Oh no, Dan. Oh, he'll probably come back in a second. Hopefully. I guess
It looks like we have the link for the application in the Facebook chat.
Yep.
But
sorry about that. I don't know what.
Hi, Dan.
My whole thing just disappeared on me.
Hey, Dan, before you start back up, there was one question regarding the new forgiveness applications. I know you mentioned them being online, but will the banks also be sending that out?
That could vary from bank to bank. So another thing they'll want to keep in mind is some banks may make an online version of that on their own website. So they're probably working on different programs that you may not have to physically fill out the hand application. You may have to go to, say, their website, fill it out on there, and it tracks everything electronically. So I would just ask whatever lender you're working with, just ask them what they're planning on doing, because that's going to be different. Maybe your bigger banks will probably have an online version that's directly on their website, versus maybe a smaller institution may want you to just do it by hand. So it all depends on their tech capabilities. So sorry about that. I don't know what happened to, let me get back to, can you guys see my screen? Okay. Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it would just, bank to bank. But like I said, there's really no rush to submit that right now. One of the things is too, is the SBA right now is working on the program for the banks to submit the forgiveness to the SBA. So what happens is the borrower submits the forgiveness application to the lender. The lender will have 60 days from the date of completed application. So completed application would mean your forgiveness application and any supporting documents that may be required. And that will vary from application to application. Then once they submit that to the SBA actually has 90 days to remit a decision on the full forgiveness of the loan, or whatever the forgiveness will be on the loan. So, just keep that in mind. If you submit a forgiveness application, you're not going to probably hear back within a few days. It's probably going to be maybe, depending on how many applications come in at one time, it could be, several months before you actually hear the final answer. But right now, the SBA is working on the system to put in place so that a lender can submit it to the SBA. So even if you were on your 8 weeks and submitted that application to the lender physically cannot submit it to the SBA as we speak. So they're working on that right now. So as far as the forgiveness application goes, the easy forgiveness. So the three points I was saying earlier before my computer gave me troubles was, this is why we're anticipating most small businesses to utilize this form. So I'll go over them here. The bar, if you're a borrower that's self-employed individual, independent contractor, or a sole prop, who had no employees at the time of the PPP loan application and did not include any employee salaries on your computation of the average monthly payroll, you can utilize the easy loan forgiveness application. Also, too, as you can see on the right side, if you're a borrower and you didn't reduce anybody's annual salary more than 25%. Now, when we say annual salary more than 25%, you're not to include anybody that you were forced to reduce due to the program requirements. So we capped the program at $100,000 annual salary. So if you had several employees that were making 130,
Is he frozen or is it?
I think he's frozen again. We're able to put the SBA PPP forgiveness application into the webinar chat and online. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them up there so that we can get those over to Dan when he comes back. Bill, is EDIC going to be, do you have anything to input about how you guys are going to be doing the PPP forgiveness?
So we're not involved with the PPP program as an insured borrower, but we'll continue on our Facebook and our website that if we do have any other additional opportunities that we'll partner with some of the other programs that have been made available to pump those out there, as we become aware.
We really appreciate everything you guys have done through the CARES Act and that whole list. We've tried to share that across with our platforms too. That's a lot of
that's been awesome. Yeah, it's been helpful to have you guys as an opportunity to echo just some of the stuff that we're doing. And, we've had really strong leadership and partnership with the mayor in trying to make sure that.
I don't know what's going on with my Zoom. It's not working with me today.
That's all right.
Sorry about that, guys. I apologize.
I think we're all used to this kind of.
I think, we just got Teams for our office, Microsoft Teams, and the same thing has been happening to all of our computers. So I don't know if there's, some sort of glitch with our computers, but Zoom wasn't happening like this before. So let's try. Hopefully, third time's a charm here. So, as you can see, I'm sorry about the delay again, folks. But, as you can see here on these other two categories, if you can basically bring up your average salary, or you can bring back your borrowers by the end of the cover period, December 31st, then you can also utilize the easy application form. And another thing too is what you're going to see is that safe harbor date is going to really, save a lot of small businesses too, because on that second bullet, it talks about it factors in, based on what the state was going on. Were you able to operate your business, during a certain time frame? And here in Massachusetts, this is probably a big thing to utilize the easy loan forgiveness application, because a lot of small businesses, by state order, were not allowed to open. I mean, we're just in the beginning of phase 2 for opening. So, truly you are at a disadvantage, and that's going to be different across the state. So here in Massachusetts, we should be able to, select one of those 3 bullets and utilize the loan forgiveness. But like I said, go on our website, go on the Treasury website, and you'll see what I'm talking about as far as, how easy it really is. It's just really just plugging in your basic figures and getting the simple calculation to find out how much you're forgiven, and then you're good. There's not too much supporting documentation other than payroll information that you'll need to provide to your lender. And this was, based on if you haven't applied for the PPP loan application yet, you definitely want to make sure you do so. Like I said, applications are going to stop June 30th. It doesn't look like, from what I'm hearing, they're going to extend that out, even with the extension of the safe harbors and things like that. Does not look like they are going to extend the program out further for right now. But what I tell you today could change in a week. Who knows? But we do have a calculation form that you can find on the Treasury website or the SBA website as well that goes over the 8 different bullets here. So based on how your business is outlined, whether you're self-employed, whether you're a partnership, an S corp, whatever the case may be, it tells you exactly how you should do your calculation and what documentation you may need to provide to your lender. Yeah, so as far as the forgiveness process, I went over that a little bit before, but this is why I'm telling everybody to really take their time with the forgiveness, because you're not going to get an answer the next day, realistically. The bank, like I said, if you pass an application in today, right now, the SBA has not given our lenders guidance on how they submit that forgiveness application with any supporting documentation to the SBA. So the lender really is going to be sitting on that until they get guidance from us. So they're working on that. We're anticipating that to come out within the next week or so. So the lender itself is going to have 60 days to actually submit that to the SBA, and then the SBA is going to have upwards of 90 days to remit forgiveness on this application. Whatever amount is not forgiven, it will either be paid back on a 2-year term or a 5-year term, depending on when you applied, or if you applied early and you had your term change with your lender, it could be a 5-year term as well. Also keep in mind is everybody across the board is going to be on a 10-year deferment. So really, if you're on that 2-year term, if you owe, say, $5,000 at the end of the day, you're only going to realistically, if you maxed out the whole deferment and waited to remit your forgiveness, you could only have maybe a few months to pay back that loan at 1%. Another thing too is when it comes to the EIDL advance, there's been a lot of questions with that as well. So a lot of people, who applied for the EIDL loan also may have gotten an advance up to $10,000. It might have not have been $10,000, could have been $5,000, $2,000, whatever the case may be. The government basically, the PPP is going to turn into a grant for all intents and purposes if it's fully forgiven. So they don't want to give small businesses 2 separate grants from 2 different programs. So they're going to include that in the actual forgiveness process. So if you got a EIDL advance, say for $5,000, they're going to factor that into how much is forgiven when they get your application. So just keep that in mind, that will be factored into the overall forgiveness of the PPP loan. And then, I'm not going to go over each one of these bullet points, but this is just a rundown again of what are eligible payroll costs. So remember, these are costs that are incurred during the covered period. So the period that you have the funds dispersed to you. So that can include salary, wages, commissions, other sorts of compensation, hazard pay, things like that can be eligible for this program. Another thing too, when it comes to self-employed individuals, if you're utilizing the 8-week covered period, they're only going to factor in a maximum forgiveness of $15,000, $15,385 per individual. If you're using the 24-week covered period, it's going to go up a little over $20,000. I think it's $20,833. So they'll factor in the full 2.5 months. Their reason being, when it comes to self-employed or independent contractors, they want to just avoid any sort of windfall. So that's the head of the Treasury, the head of the SBA, they want to just avoid any sort of windfall to give to a sole proprietor or independent contractor, because their theory is that there's not as much overhead costs for sole proprietors or independent contractors. So that's where the intention of that is. But if you're utilizing the 24 weeks, then predominantly your loan should be fully forgiven as a sole prop. So non-payroll costs. So again, when it comes to non-payroll costs, this can't be any new obligation that came in prior to the February 15th. So we had a question recently that came through our email, and they signed up, there was a new utility agreement that was signed up with a small business, I think in May. That's not going to count as far as covered utility costs. That agreement had to have been in place prior to any new expenses. And then when it comes to interest expenses on real personal property, lease payments, things like that. Also, costs are eligible forgiveness were paid. You want to make sure that they're during the covered period or before the next billing day. So another thing too is you can pay prior commitments, but you can't pay anything that's future. So no prepayments on different utility costs or other eligible costs. But you can, like, let's say you had a payment in March that was due, you can go back and utilize those funds to pay the March payment, just nothing in the future that's past your covered period. And again, your non-payroll costs shouldn't, if you want your loan to be fully forgiven, should be limited to 40% or less of the loan. And then as far as safe harbors on maintaining your full-time equivalents, just keep in mind, there was initially, some covered period reference timeframes that you could utilize. So you could utilize, February 15th through June 30th of 2019 or January 1st, 2020 to the end of February of 2020 when it came to comparing your FTEs to the safe harbor date. So I think right now, based on how the safe harbor works and the intention of it, it really shouldn't be any problem for most small businesses to get their capacity up to, full capacity. And also too, when it comes to the safe harbor, keep in mind that, if you were able to show that you were offering jobs back and you couldn't get employees to come back, that safe harbor is in place. As long as you're making reasonable documentation on, trying to retain your employees. There's no way for a small business during this time to hopefully get all their employees back or hire new employees. But you just want to make sure that you are documenting the efforts being made when it comes to trying to retain employees or hire new employees. So these are just
It looks like he's frozen again.
small businesses that will really need to get into the nitty gritty. As long as you just make sure to document what you are, the employees that are coming back, if they're not coming back, document, the type of business that you're in and the dates that you weren't able to be in operation based on state or city, regulations being put in place. Document all of that. If you had to reduce salaries for one reason or another, make sure you're documenting on all that and utilize that safe harbor time frame to try to get to where you need to be, so you can actually utilize that easy application versus the long format. Again, though, if you need help if you are a business that is going to need to utilize the long format, highly suggest, talking to a small business advisor. If you have an accountant, have them help you with that. You can also utilize SBA's resource partners. So whether it's SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers, Center for Women in Enterprise, the Veterans Business Outreach Center, they can all help you with those applications as well. Those are government resources. Those are taxpayer funded resources. So, everybody's already paying for that with their taxes anyways. So, they're free resources that you can utilize. And, I know SCORE's office is right at the same building as the Lynn Chamber. We have the SBDC Northeast chapter right at Salem State. So we have a lot of local resources right in the Lynn area. So, just keep that in mind. So as far as documentation goes, as far as rehiring or restoring salary and wages and employee retention, so as you can see here on the slide here, you want to document any sort of good faith offer to rehire and any employees that have declined, you want to make sure you retain that as well. So that's very, very important. You're not always going to need to submit all of this to the SBA, but there are going to be cases where the SBA is going to look at that, because they're one of the things that the SBA is going to do too is to make sure that people were utilizing these funds for the right intentions, right? So to get the employees back, into the workforce. So, there could be cases where a forgiveness application gets submitted to the SBA, and the SBA wants more information provided. So keep that in mind, that even if you're not submitting it initially to your bank, the SBA could always come and maybe audit that particular forgiveness application. So be prepared for the SBA to maybe call you. That's not going to happen across the board, but they are going to audit random applications. And your higher dollar amounts, I think $2 million and above, they're going to be auditing all of those across the board from what I understand. So then, as far as forgiveness steps for the employers, make sure that you're following these steps here, outlined. So add total eligible payroll and non-payroll costs incurred. You want to calculate any reduction in payroll that's greater than 25%. Reduce, total eligible expenses by any payroll reduction. So, that's one thing too, is if you didn't utilize upwards of 60% of the loan for payroll costs, your loan's not going to be not fully forgiven, but it will be reduced based on how much you didn't use. So let's say on a $100,000 loan, you only used 54% of it for payroll, not 60%. Your eligible non-payroll costs will also be reduced on forgiveness on that end as well. So just keep that in mind, because you didn't hit that 60% threshold. Does not mean the entire loan will be forgiven, but it will be prorated on both ends based on if you didn't hit that 60%. But if you hit that 60%, you should be. And then just a quick summary before we, get into questions. As far as calculating your loan forgiveness, you want to take the eligible total expenses after hourly wage and salary reductions. Also, consider the eligible payroll costs, and you want to divide it by 0.60 or 60%, and that will show you how much of the loan will be forgiven. And then, as far as here, owner computation replacement. So depending on what covered period you use, if you're utilizing the 8-week covered period, the maximum forgiveness you can get is $15,385. If you're utilizing the 24-week covered period, you can do $20,833. And then covered expenses are going to be limited to the extent claimed or entitled to be on your 2019 Schedule C. So, make sure that it was services that were in place prior to February 15th. All right, so I think that's it. And if we want to open it up for questions, we can do so.
So I think we've answered some of the questions that have already come in. I think the biggest thing that I, keep hearing from you is just to keep track of a lot of things.
Yeah, like we tell our lenders, it's all about document. So that's, for the borrowers, it's the same thing. You really want to, record retention is very important during this time. And I mean, as a small business, it's always important for record retention, especially when it comes to, your more HR issues, when it comes to hiring back employees or having to let go of employees. As a small business, that should always be an important step, for you, because you need a document in case there's any sort of legal issues that pop up, so that should be, in the forefront for the most part. I mean, if you're a sole proprietor with no employees, you're really not going to have to worry about a lot of those safe harbor issues. But if you have your employees, documenting, that you offer the job back, document that maybe they declined for the job, notifying unemployment that you did offer them a job. Because that's one thing too, is I think that, the states and the federal government, they're trying to make sure people aren't double dipping per se. So, if you're going to stay on unemployment, stay on unemployment. They don't want you paying the employee and that person is also on unemployment. But then also when it comes to unemployment, you're telling the state unemployment that you cannot find a job or no job is being offered to you. But then if your employer says, well, we did offer you a job. So, I know it's tough because, there's some short-term advantages for unemployment right now, depending on what your salary is. But at the end of the day, you got to look at the big picture and the long-term effect. So we like to tell everybody that, it's important to get everybody back in the workforce, especially if your employer is really opening up now that more businesses are able to, with these phases going on here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of businesses that are just starting to,
Yeah.
especially the restaurants now with, some of them chose to do the outdoor seating, but now as of today, they're able to do indoor seating. So I think over the next week, we're going to be seeing some restaurants or other businesses. I know that
Yeah.
other businesses started, probably more questions are going to be coming up. So on that note, if there are questions in the future, I know that we can put your information and you are always open.
Oh yeah, I think on the last slide I threw myself, my colleagues' information as well. I forgot to go to the last slide, but yeah, you're more than welcome to give, my phone number. Easiest way to get me right now is by cell phone because we're really not in the office. I might go in maybe once every couple of weeks, but right now we're at the Tip O'Neill building in Boston, and they still have that closed to the public as we speak. So we're only allowed to go in, for certain issues. But yeah, given my cell phone, my email, I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Sure.
And then on that note, I always put this out there that again, like you said, we house SCORE in the Greater Lynn Chamber of Commerce. So if anybody has any questions on that, please just email us at info@Greater Lynn Chamber, and we can schedule an appointment with one of our representatives. Bill, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit. I know we started talking when Dan froze up, but maybe a little bit about some of the services you guys are doing right now, on addition to some of the things that you guys have always done in the past, just so that people, I don't know, just another opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we're available if there are questions that come up. People can feel free to access us either on our website, at www.ediclyn.org, or they can call our main number at City Hall. City Hall is transitioning into 50% capacity and we'll be opening back up again on July 7th. But you can access, again, our hyperlinks are located on our website to connect with either myself or my other colleagues, Mary Jane Smalley, Denise Surratt, Pauline Spino, or Jim himself. And we'd be happy to answer any of the questions. We do have some of the information of the programs that were available. Right now, there's not anything that's currently open. But again, if that changes in the coming weeks, please feel free to check our website. We'll also try as much as possible to get the information out via Facebook, through you guys, the chamber, through the mayor's office and their social media channels. And we're hopeful that if there are opportunities to present themselves, we'll continue to do as we had previously and trying to assist as many businesses as possible.
And I also just want to point out that North Shore Latino Business Association has been pushing that information as well. So always to check on their Facebook and their website. Lynn Main Streets, we're trying to post as much information that we collect out to the public. But it's also important for us to hear from the community, the businesses specifically, because of what we're talking about, what they need answers to. So always ask questions. And I know from all of us here that we'll try to get them the best information that we can.
I think I saw one question that came up in the chat, and it talked about, what documentation.
Oh, did he freeze?
As far as documentation that would be, acceptable, and when it comes to hiring new employees, and if you're the employer, I would highly, they didn't say anything specific as far as what's needed, but you really should, as the employer, provide some sort of formal documentation if you're offering the job back. How they respond to you, how the employee or former employee responds to you, that may be out of your control. So they may send you a text message or things like that. If you're able to retain that and show record of that, that should be fine, because you can't control how the employee. But if you're the employer, I would definitely a formal letter, whether it's an email online, whether it's something you put in the mail. I would, as the employer, I would definitely do something like that. Not do it via text message, but if the response is, collect them however you get them. At the end of the day, if they called you over the phone, it might be hard to retain, because that conversation, because it can be like, well, I didn't say this or you didn't say that, so if they do call you, ask them to, provide a follow-up email about the conversation or something like that, so that you have that on record that they did not accept the job back, or maybe they need reduced hours, whatever the case may be, because and I'm sure a lot of businesses will run into, especially reduced hours, where you got, a lot of parents, they got young children, and they're worried about, the coronavirus still with the daycares and things like that. So they may want to try to, have some sort of flex schedule, so they don't have to bring their kid to the daycare as much or full time. So, but those safe harbors are in place for that, because you as the employer, that's out of your control too. You really can't, do anything about that.
Great. I don't think any questions came through on Facebook yet that I saw. And it is just 11 o'clock, so it's always nice to be leaving right on time. Again, please reach out to anybody associated with this call or any other community organizations, and we will try to get you the best information as we can. And we will be putting Dan's information in. One just came through, I'm being told. Let me just check.
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. I'm not a tech guy. I know loans and things like that, but technology is not my thing.
Dan, one last question. Can you speak to the prospective additional PPP that is being considered in the House at this time?
No. I mean, I to be honest, I don't know too much about that. And really, so what happens is, if there's additional changes or requirements, they don't give us any insight at the offices until it's actually signed by the president. And even when it's signed by the president, we still don't get it until it goes to the Treasury and SBA. They look over everything, then they decide on making some rules or changes or suggestions. Then they spit it and send it out to us. So we really, and the other thing too is commenting on what could be a change, doesn't do anybody any good, because it could be irrelevant. Those could not get passed and things like that. But yeah, I'm actually not too familiar with any new changes, or haven't really heard anything significant other than the process for lenders to submit the forgiveness application to the SBA. That's definitely being worked on right now, as we speak. And that's, pretty much all that I've heard that's being, currently worked on, which should be out probably within the next week or so, from what I'm told.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for participating. I don't see any other additional questions. But again, if anything comes up, we will be putting Dan's information in on the chat. It's always, you can always ask us and we'll provide it as well too. So thank you, Bill, for joining us. Thanks, Carolyn and Tia. We really appreciate the everything. So thanks so much. Thanks, Dan.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Thanks again, Dan.
Thanks.